The throne room fell silent as every Sarakai present waited for Ji-hoon to answer their queen. He stood before her with his hands still bound, surrounded by guards who watched his every movement with suspicious silver eyes. Queen Valithra had asked him a simple question. Why had he risked his life for a stranger? To Ji-hoon, the answer seemed obvious to the ancient alien monarch before him. It apparently was not. She was hurt, Ji-hoon said slowly, choosing his words with care. And the beast was going to kill her, so I helped. The queen tilted her head in a gesture that the translation device could not interpret. That is what you did, she replied. But I asked you why. Because it was the right thing to do. A murmur rippled through the assembled Sarakai, clicking sounds that his translator rendered as confusion and disbelief. Valithra raised one of her 4 hands and the chamber fell silent again. You are a cargo pilot, she said. A trader who moves goods between systems for profit. Correct. Ji-hoon nodded. And my daughter was a stranger to you, a member of a species you had never encountered before. Yes, she could offer you nothing, the queen continued. No payment, no alliance, no benefit of any kind, and yet you attacked the creature that has killed hundreds of my warriors over the centuries. Ji-hoon shifted uncomfortably under her piercing gaze. I did not really think about it, he admitted. I just saw someone who needed help and I helped. The queen was quiet for a long moment. Among my people, she finally said, every action serves the hive. And we do nothing without purpose and without calculation of benefit. So what you describe is not rational behavior. Maybe not. Ji-hoon agreed. But I am human, and humans do irrational things all the time, especially when someone is in danger. Valithra leaned back on her throne and studied him with an expression he could not read. I have ruled for 300 cycles, she said, and in that time I have encountered many species, but I have never met one quite like yours. She gestured, and a guard stepped forward to cut the bindings from Ji-hoon's wrists. By the ancient laws of my people, you have created a debt, the queen announced. You saved the life of a royal daughter, and that debt must be acknowledged and repaid. Ji-hoon rubbed his sore wrists and felt a small spark of hope. I appreciate that, Your Majesty, but I really just need to get a message to my people and find a way off this moon. So if you could help me with that, we can call it even. No. The single word echoed through the chamber. No? Ji-hoon repeated. The debt is not yours to dismiss, Valithra explained. It belongs to the one who owes it, and I will decide how it is repaid. And until I make that decision, you will remain here as a guest of the royal hive. Your Majesty, I have contracts, deliveries, people expecting me. They will wait. With respect, they will not wait, and they will assume I am dead and move on. The queen's silver eyes showed no sympathy. That is unfortunate. But it does not change the law, and you will stay until I understand why you did what you did and how the debt should be settled. Ji-hoon opened his mouth to argue further, but a commotion at the chamber doors interrupted him. The crowd parted, as 2 attendants helped a familiar figure walk slowly into the throne room. Princess Kithara still bore bandages on her arms, and she moved with obvious pain, but her eyes were clear and alert. She stopped before the throne and bowed her head to her mother. I asked to be brought here, she said. When I heard the human was being questioned, you should be resting, the queen replied, and for the first time, her voice held something other than cold authority. I needed to speak for him, Kithara said. I saw what he did, mother, and I need you to understand. She turned to look at Ji-hoon with those large silver eyes. My guards fled when the Thornback attacked, she said. Every one of them left me to die, because that is what logic demanded, as there was no point in them dying too. But this human, this stranger from the stars, he ran toward the danger instead of away. The princess took a painful step closer to Ji-hoon. He used fire and fury and his own body as a shield, and he would not stop until the beast retreated. And then he carried me to his ship and spent all night keeping me alive." She looked back at her mother. "I do not understand why he did it either, but I'm alive because of him, and that matters more than understanding." The queen was silent for a long moment, her eyes moving between her daughter and the human who had saved her. "You speak well for him," she finally said, "and your words have weight. But they do not change the law." She focused on Ji-hoon again. "You will be given quarters in the palace and freedom to move within its walls. And you will not be treated as a prisoner, but you will not leave until I am satisfied." Ji-hoon knew there was no point in arguing further. "Thank you for your hospitality," he said, because it seemed like the safest response. The queen made a gesture, and guards moved to escort him away as he walked past the princess. She reached out and touched his arm with one of her hands. "Thank you," she said quietly. "I will visit you soon." Ji-hoon nodded and allowed himself to be led away. His quarters turned out to be surprisingly comfortable. The room was large and filled with soft furniture designed for Sarakai bodies. But someone had made an effort to add items more suitable for a human. A bed with actual blankets had been set up in one corner, and there were containers of food that his translator told him were safe for human consumption. A window looked out over the jungle canopy, which glowed with soft blue light as the sun set. Ji-hoon sat on the edge of the bed and tried to process everything that had happened 24 hours ago. He had been a simple cargo pilot, making routine deliveries. Now he was a guest and prisoner of an alien queen on a moon he had never planned to visit. He wondered if his shipping company would try to find him, or if they would simply write off the loss and hire someone else. He wondered if his family would ever know what happened to him. A knock at his door interrupted these gloomy thoughts. He opened it to find Princess Kithara standing in the hallway, accompanied by two attendants who watched Ji-hoon with obvious suspicion. "May I come in?" she asked. Ji-hoon stepped aside and gestured for her to enter. Kithara moved slowly to a chair by the window and lowered herself into it with a small sound of discomfort. Her attendants remained outside, though they left the door open. "You should be resting," Ji-hoon said, echoing her mother's words. "I have questions," the princess replied, "and rest can wait." She studied him with the same intensity her mother had shown, but there was curiosity in her eyes rather than cold calculation. "In my language, we have no word for what you did," she said. "The closest translation would be something like foolish sacrifice, but that implies you gain nothing. And you gain nothing. So why?" Ji-hoon sat on the edge of his bed and thought about how to explain something that seemed so natural to him. "Humans have this thing," he said slowly. "We call it empathy, and it means we feel what other people feel. So when I saw you scared and hurt, I felt scared and hurt too, and I wanted to make it stop." Kithara leaned forward with fascination. "You felt my pain." "Not exactly, but I could imagine it, and that was enough. And you would do this for any stranger, not just someone who could help you later." Ji-hoon nodded. "Most humans would, I think. Or at least most humans I know." The princess was quiet for a long moment. "My mother says humans are a young species," she finally said, "new to the stars and still learning your place. But I think she might be wrong, because maybe you have something to teach us instead." She rose carefully from her chair. "I will come again tomorrow, if you permit it, because I want to learn more about your people and this strange thing called empathy." "I would like that," Ji-hoon said, and found that he meant it. After she left, he stood at the window and watched the alien jungle glow beneath an unfamiliar sky. He was trapped on a strange world with no way home and no idea how long he would be kept here. But for the first time since his crash, he did not feel entirely alone. Weeks passed and Ji-hoon fell into a strange rhythm of life in the alien palace. Princess Kithara visited him every day, sometimes for hours at a time, asking endless questions about human culture and human emotions and human ways of seeing the universe. He taught her about friendship, about the bonds that form between individuals rather than groups. He explained how humans could love people who were not family and sacrifice for strangers without expecting anything. In return, she listened with the intensity of someone discovering an entirely new way of thinking among my people. She told him one afternoon, connection exists only to serve the hive, and a mother loves her children because they carry her bloodline forward. And a worker serves the queen because that is their function. That sounds lonely. Ji-hoon said. Kithra tilted her head in that way he had come to recognize as deep thought. I did not know what lonely meant until you explained it, she admitted. But now I think perhaps I have felt it my whole life without having a word for it. Their conversations attracted attention throughout the palace. Ji-hoon became aware of Sarakai watching him wherever he went, whispering to each other in cliques that his translators sometimes failed to catch. Not all of the attention was friendly. One evening, a noble named Threxus confronted him in the gardens. He was a tall Sarakai with scars on his exoskeleton and anger in his silver eyes. You do not belong here, Threxus said, and you are poisoning the mind of our princess with your alien ideas. Ji-hoon kept his voice calm. I'm only answering her questions. Questions she should not be asking, Threxus replied. And soon the queen will see you for the threat you are, and when she does, I will personally ensure you never leave this moon alive. He stalked away before Ji-hoon could respond that night. Ji-hoon made a decision. He could not stay here forever, waiting for Queen Valithra to decide his fate. He needed to find a way home over the next several days. He began asking careful questions about his crashed ship. The Sarakai had brought it to the palace, he learned, and stored it in a hangar with other vessels they had collected over the years. When he finally found the hangar, his heart sank. The ship was even more damaged than he remembered, but as he examined it more closely, he realized the communication array might be salvageable if he could just get it working. He could send a distress signal that might reach human space. He began sneaking into the hangar at night, working by the glow of bioluminescent panels to repair what he could. It was slow and difficult work, but after a week he had made real progress. On the 8th night, he was deep inside the ship's communication hub when a voice made him freeze. I know what you are doing. Ji-hoon turned to find Kithra standing in the hangar doorway, her wings folded tight against her body. I can explain, he said. You are trying to escape, she said, and there was hurt in her voice. After everything we have shared, you are trying to leave, Kithra. I cannot stay here forever, and I have a life beyond this moon. People who might be looking for me. I know. She moved closer, her steps echoing in the empty hangar. I am not here to stop you. Ji-hoon blinked in surprise. You are not going to tell your mother? No, Kithra said, because you taught me about something called choice, and about how beings should be free to decide their own path. So I am giving you that choice now. She reached out and touched his hand. But I am asking you to choose differently, she said. Not because the law demands it, but because I want you to stay. It was the most human thing she had ever said. Ji-hoon looked at this alien princess who had become his friend over the past weeks. He thought about everything he had taught her and everything she had taught him in return. I am not leaving tonight, he said, but I need the option. And I need to know that if I go, it is because I chose to, not because I was forced. Kithra nodded slowly. I understand. She turned to leave, then paused at the door. My mother is watching you, she said, and she sees how I have changed since meeting you. But she is not sure if that change is good or bad. So be careful. Before Ji-hoon could respond, an alarm began to wail throughout the palace. Red light flooded the hangar as Sarakai rushed past in organized chaos. What is happening? Ji-hoon asked. Kithra's face had gone pale. Someone has tried to kill my mother. They rushed through the palace together, Kithra leading him through passages he had never seen. They found the queen's chambers surrounded by guards, and inside, Queen Valithra sat on her bed while attendants treated a wound on her shoulder. The queen looked up as her daughter entered. "The assassin has been caught," Valithra said. A servant in the pay of Queen Morathan, Jehun, recognized the name from conversations with Kithara. Morathan ruled a rival hive on the far side of the moon, and tensions between their peoples had simmered for generations. "Is war coming?" Kithara asked. "Perhaps," her mother replied. "Morathan has been building her forces for years, and this assassination attempt may have been a test of our defenses." The queen's silver eyes found Jehun standing behind her daughter. "And I must decide what to do about you," she said. "About me?" "Morathan knows you are here," Valithra explained, "and she believes humans possess technologies and abilities that could tip the balance of power, so she wants you. And she may be willing to start a war to get you." Jehun felt a chill run through him. "I have nothing," he said. "I am just a cargo pilot with a broken ship." "That does not matter," the queen replied. "What matters is what Morathan believes, and she believes you are valuable. And that makes you dangerous to both of us." She stood slowly, waving away her attendants. "I have watched you these past weeks," she said, "and I have watched my daughter change under your influence. And I am still not certain what to make of you." She walked toward him, tall and terrifying and ancient. "But I know this. You did not save Kithara for power or advantage. And that kind of behavior confuses Morathan as much as it confuses me." The queen stopped before him and looked down with those mercury eyes. "I am not ready to let you go," she said, "but not because of the debt. And I am keeping you here because I am beginning to understand that you might be the most interesting thing to happen to my people in centuries." She turned away. "War is coming," she said. "And when it does, we will learn what humans are truly made of." Jehun looked at Kithara, who looked back at him with fear and hope mixed equally in her expression. He had wanted to escape. Now he was about to be caught in the middle of an alien war, and somehow, despite everything, leaving no longer seemed like the right choice. The War Council chamber was filled with the most powerful Sarakai in the kingdom. Generals and nobles and advisors clustered around a massive table that displayed a glowing map of the jungle moon. Jehun stood in the corner, watching and listening as Queen Valithra discussed strategy with her commanders. He was not supposed to be here, but Kithara had insisted he attend. "You need to understand what is happening," she had told him, "because it involves you whether you like it or not." The news from the borders was grim. Queen Morathan had massed her forces along the river that separated their territory, scouts reported. Thousands of soldiers preparing for an assault. The rival hive outnumbered them nearly 2-1. "We cannot win a direct confrontation," General Theska admitted, "and our defenses are strong, but they will not hold forever." "Then we negotiate," suggested an advisor named Vathis. "And we offer Morathan something she wants in exchange for peace." "She wants the human," Theska replied. And every eye in the room turned to Jehun Queen. Valithra's voice cut through the murmuring. "Explain." "Morathan has sent a message," Theska said, "and she offers to withdraw her forces if we surrender the human to her custody, because she believes studying him could give her hive technological and military advantages. And if we refuse?" "War," the general said simply. The chamber erupted in debate. Some argued that one alien life was not worth thousands of Sarakai deaths. Others insisted that surrendering to Morathan's demands would show weakness and invite more aggression later. Jehun listened to them, discuss his fate like he was a piece of cargo to be traded. Then he stepped forward. "I will go." The chamber fell silent. "If surrendering myself prevents war," Jehun continued, "then it is the right thing to do, because I am not going to let people die for me." Queen Valithra studied him with an expression he could not read. "You would sacrifice your freedom to save those who have held you captive?" "They are not my captors," Ji-hoon said. "Not anymore, and Kithara is my friend. And friends do not let friends die when they can prevent it." The princess made a sound of protest. "No," she said, "you cannot do this. And I will not allow it. It is not your choice." Ji-hoon replied gently. "You taught me that individuals matter," Kithara argued. "That one life has value beyond its use to the group. So how can you throw away your own life after teaching me that? Because protecting people you care about matters more than protecting yourself," Ji-hoon said. "And that is maybe the most human thing of all." The queen raised a hand and the chamber fell silent again. "The human has spoken," Valithra said. "And his words have weight. But I have not yet decided whether to accept his offer." She turned to her generals. "Prepare our defenses and gather what forces we can. And we will consider all options before making a final choice." The council dispersed, leaving Ji-hoon alone with the queen and Kithara. "You would truly do this," Valithra said. "And you would surrender yourself to an enemy who sees you only as a resource to be exploited, if it saves lives?" "Yes." The queen walked slowly around him, studying him from every angle. "When you first came before me, I thought you were simply strange," she said. "A creature with broken logic and no understanding of how the universe works. But I begin to think the failure of understanding is mine." She stopped before him. "My daughter has changed since meeting you," she continued. "And she speaks of things like friendship and choice and individual value. Concepts that have no place in Sarakai thinking. But perhaps they should." "Mother," Kithara said, "you cannot send him to Morthan. I have not decided anything yet." The queen turned to her daughter. "But I want to understand why you care so much about this alien. And what has he given you that our own people could not?" Kithara was quiet for a moment. "Hope," she finally said. "Because he showed me a different way of seeing the world, where beings matter because they exist, not because of what they can do for the hive. And I did not know I needed that until he gave it to me." Valithra listened to her daughter with something that might have been wonder or might have been concern. "You truly believe one human has more value than the lives of our soldiers?" "I believe his way of thinking has value," Kithara replied. "And if we send him to Morthan, we lose more than one human, because we lose the chance to learn from him." The queen was silent for a long time. "I will think on this," she finally said. "But for now, the human remains here." The next 3 days passed in tense preparation. Ji-hoon helped where he could, mostly staying out of the way as Sarakai soldiers fortified the palace defenses. He spent hours with Kithara, neither of them speaking about what might come on the 4th day. A messenger arrived from Morthan. The rival queen had grown impatient if the human was not delivered to the border by sunset. Her forces would attack. Valithra called another council. But this time the decision seemed clear. "We have no choice," Vathis said. "And the human must go." Most of the council agreed. Ji-hoon was brought forward, and guards bound his hands once more. "I am sorry," Valithra said, "but I cannot sacrifice my people for one alien, no matter how interesting he may be." Ji-hoon nodded. "I understand." Kithara stepped forward with tears in her silver eyes. "There must be another way." "There is not," her mother replied. The guards began to lead Ji-hoon from the chamber as he walked through the palace one last time. He made a decision. He might be surrendering himself, but he would not go quietly while his escort paused to receive final instructions. Ji-hoon slipped away and ran to the hangar where his broken ship waited. The communication array was almost repaired. He had one chance working frantically. Ji-hoon connected the final components and powered up the system. Static filled the speakers. Then cleared, he keyed in the universal distress frequency and spoke quickly. "This is Captain Yoon Ji-hoon of the cargo vessel Wandering Star. Broadcasting from coordinates I am attaching to this message. And I am stranded on an alien moon and about to be handed over to a hostile force. So if anyone can hear this, Please respond." He repeated the message 3 times before the guards found him and dragged him away. He did not know if anyone had heard. He did not know if anyone would come, but he had tried. And sometimes that was all you could do. The exchange was set to happen at the border, a wide clearing where the river marked the boundary between the 2 hive territories. Morathan's soldiers were already waiting when Ji-hoon arrived. Thousands of them filling the far bank like a dark tide. Queen Morathan herself had come to claim her prize. She was larger than Valithra, with black armor covering her exoskeleton and cruel intelligence in her silver eyes. "At last," she said. "The human and I have waited long enough for this moment." But before the exchange could happen, something appeared in the sky. Lights that were not stars, lights that were moving fast. Ji-hoon looked up and felt his heart surge with hope. Ships were descending through the atmosphere. Human ships with familiar markings. His distress signal had been heard. "What is this?" Morathan demanded. Ji-hoon smiled. "That is my people," he said, "and I think they are here to negotiate." The human ships came down from the sky like metal angels, their engines roaring as they descended toward the border. Clearing Queen Morathan's forces scrambled into defensive positions. Weapons raised toward these unexpected visitors. Queen Valithra's soldiers did the same. Uncertain whether these newcomers were friends or enemies, Ji-hoon watched with his hands still bound and his heart pounding in his chest. 3 vessels landed in the space between the 2 armies, their hulls scarred from years of patrol duty. The markings identified them as a frontier patrol squadron, the kind of small military unit that responded to distress signals in the outer regions of human space. A hatch opened and soldiers emerged, taking defensive positions around their ships. Then a woman in an officer's uniform stepped out and surveyed the scene with calm authority. "I am Commander Bak Sujin of the United Earth Patrol," she announced, her voice amplified by speakers. "And we received a distress call from a human citizen. So someone want to explain why one of my people is tied up in the middle of what looks like a war zone?" Morathan stepped forward, her wings flaring with anger. "This is internal Sarake business, and you have no authority here." "I have authority over human citizens," Commander Bak replied. "And that man is a human citizen." She turned her attention to Valithra. "And you must be the other queen, because my sensors picked up 2 distinct forces here. So would you like to tell me what is going on?" Valithra approached with careful dignity. "The human crashed on our moon and saved my daughter's life," she explained. "And since then, he has been a guest in my palace." "A guest?" Morathan laughed. "Is that what you call a prisoner? He was free to move within the palace, but not free to leave." Commander Bak held up a hand to stop the argument. "Captain Yoon, is what she says true?" "Mostly," Ji-hoon said. "But it is complicated. It always is." The commander walked forward until she stood before him, then pulled a knife and cut his bindings. "You are free now," she said. "So come with us and we will get you home." Ji-hoon rubbed his wrists and looked at the human ships that represented everything he had wanted for weeks. Then he looked at Kithara, who stood among her mother's guards with fear and hope mixed in her silver eyes. "Wait," he said. Commander Bak raised an eyebrow. "I appreciate the rescue," Ji-hoon continued, "but I cannot leave yet because there is about to be a war here, and I might be able to stop it. That is not our problem. Maybe not, but it is mine." He walked past the commander toward the space between the 2 armies. "Queen Morathan," he called out, "you wanted me because you thought I could give you an advantage. But I'm just a cargo pilot with no special knowledge or abilities. So whatever you hoped to gain from me, you would have been disappointed." Morathan's eyes narrowed. "You expect me to believe that?" "I expect you to consider that starting a war over a mistake would be embarrassing for someone as powerful as you." A murmur ran through both armies. Ji-hoon turned to face Valithra. "And you kept me because you wanted to understand why I saved your daughter," he said. So let me explain it one more time, not for you, but for everyone here to hear. He raised his voice so it carried across the clearing. I saved Princess Kithora because she was in trouble and I could help. And that is it, because there was no calculation, no expectation of reward, no strategic thinking. And I did it because when humans see someone suffering, something inside us demands that we act. He looked at the soldiers on both sides. I know that does not make sense to you. He continued, because your whole society is built on logic and service to the hive. But maybe that is not the only way to live. And maybe there is value in caring about individuals, even strangers, even enemies. The clearing was silent. You are about to fight a war, Ji-hoon said, and thousands will die on both sides. And at the end, one of you will win and one will lose. But both of you will be weaker. So let me ask you something. Is that really what you want? Morthen laughed. Pretty words from a creature who understands nothing of Sarakai ways. I understand that you are afraid. Ji-hoon replied, because you built up your army because you were afraid of Valithra. And she built up her defenses because she was afraid of you. And now you are both trapped by that fear. He stepped toward Morthen. But fear does not have to rule you, he said, because you can choose differently. And that is something else humans understand. We always have a choice. Queen Morthen stared at him for a long moment. Then she looked at the human ships with their weapons powered and ready. She looked at her own army. Then at Valithra's defenders. You brought reinforcements, she said to Valithra. Or perhaps allies. I did not bring them, Valithra replied. But I would be foolish not to accept their help if offered. She looked at Commander Back. Would you? The commander shrugged. We patrol this region, and stability is in everyone's interest. So if you two can work out your differences peacefully, we would be happy to help establish a lasting arrangement. Morthen's wings twitched with frustration. She had come expecting an easy victory. And now she faced the possibility of fighting both Valithra and unknown human forces. This is not over, she said. But it is not worth the cost today. She signaled her forces to withdraw as the enemy army pulled back across the river. Ji-hoon felt the tension drain from his body. He had done it. He had stopped a war with nothing but words. Kithora rushed forward and embraced him, her wings wrapping around them both. You stayed, she whispered. Even when you could have left, you stayed. I told you, he said. Protecting the people you care about matters more than protecting yourself. Queen Valithra approached them with an expression he had never seen on her face before. It looked almost like respect. You could have escaped, she said, and the humans would have taken you home. But instead, you risked yourself to prevent bloodshed between peoples. Who held you captive? They are not just peoples to me anymore, Ji-hoon replied. Not after everything that has happened. The queen was silent for a moment. I believe I finally understand, she said. What drove you to save my daughter? And it is not logic or calculation, but something deeper. Something my people have forgotten how to feel. She reached out and touched his shoulder. The debt is repaid, she announced, and you are free to go. Ji-hoon looked at the human ships waiting to take him. He thought about his cargo routes and his contracts and his family back on Earth. Then he thought about Kithora and everything he had built here and everything that might still be possible. Actually, he said, I was wondering if that ambassador position you mentioned was still available. Valithra's eyes widened in surprise. You wish to stay? I think there is more I can teach your people, Ji-hoon said, and more they can teach me. So if you will have me, I would like to try. The queen looked at her daughter, then back at the human who had changed everything. You would be the first human to ever hold such a position among the Sarakai. Then it is about time someone did, for the first time in 300 cycles of rule. Queen Valithra smiled. Welcome to the hive. Ambassador Yoon, Commander Back approached and offered her hand. "Looks like you found yourself a new posting," she said. "And I will let command know you are staying voluntarily this time." Ji-hoon shook her hand. "Thank you for coming. Thank you for the interesting situation," she replied with a grin. "And if you ever need backup again, just send another distress call." As the human ships lifted off and disappeared into the sky, Ji-hoon stood beside Kithara and watched them go. He had come to this moon as a stranded pilot with no hope of rescue. Now he was staying by choice. As a bridge between two peoples. "Do you regret it?" Kithara asked. Ji-hoon looked at her, at the queen who had become something like a friend, at the palace that had become something like a home. "Not for a second," he said, and together they walked back through the palace gates, toward a future neither of them could have imagined, but both of them were eager to build. The cargo ship screamed through the atmosphere of the jungle moon, trailing smoke and fire behind it like a dying comet. Captain Yoon Ji-hoon gripped the controls with white knuckles as alarms blared all around him, and the hull groaned under stress it was never designed to handle. "Come on," he muttered through clenched teeth. "Just a little more." The engines had failed 3 hours ago, somewhere in the space between two systems he had never visited before. Now he was falling toward a moon covered in thick purple jungle, and his only goal was to not die in the next 60 seconds. The ship hit the canopy with a terrible crash, tearing through massive trees that glowed with soft blue light. Ji-hoon was thrown forward against his harness as the vessel bounced and scraped and finally came to rest in a crater of its own making. For a long moment, he simply sat there, breathing hard and listening to the ticking of cooling metal. He was alive. That was more than he had expected. Ji-hoon released his harness and stumbled through the smoke-filled cabin to check his supplies. The ship was ruined beyond any hope of flying again. But perhaps he could salvage the communications array or find parts to trade if anyone lived on this moon. He grabbed his emergency pack, a flashlight, and a plasma cutter that could serve as a weapon if needed. The air outside was thick and warm and smelled like flowers he could not name. Massive trees rose all around him, their bark covered in patterns that pulsed with bioluminescent light. Strange creatures called to each other in the darkness between the branches. It was beautiful and terrifying in equal measure. Ji-hoon spent the first few hours searching for anything. Useful in the wreckage. He managed to save some food, water purification tablets, and a medical kit. The communication array was completely destroyed, crushed when a tree trunk had punched through the hull. He was stranded on an alien moon with no way to call for help. As the local sun began to set and the jungle grew darker, Ji-hoon heard something that made him freeze. Screaming, not animal screaming, but the kind of sound that intelligent beings make when they are afraid for their lives. He should have stayed hidden. He should have waited in his broken ship until morning and then figured out his next move. That would have been the smart thing to do instead. Ji-hoon grabbed his plasma cutter and ran toward the sound. He found them in a clearing not far from his crash. Sight 6 tall creatures with smooth exoskeletons and delicate wings were fighting desperately against something massive and terrible. The beast was like nothing Ji-hoon had ever seen. It had too many legs and too many eyes and a mouth full of teeth that seemed to go back forever. 3 of the winged creatures were already down, their bodies broken and still. The others were trying to retreat, but one of them was badly wounded, dragging herself across the ground with 2 of her 4 arms, while the other 2 hung limp and bleeding. The beast turned toward the wounded one, ignoring the others who fled into the jungle. It knew easy prey when it saw it. Ji-hoon did not think, he simply acted. He burst from the tree line, shouting at the top of his lungs, waving his arms and activating the plasma cutter so its blue flame lit up the darkness. The beast turned toward him. Confused by this small, loud creature that had appeared from nowhere, Ji-hoon grabbed a fallen branch and thrust it into the plasma cutter's flame. The wood caught fire immediately, and he swung the makeshift torch at the beast's face. It reared back with a sound like grinding metal, clearly not expecting its prey to fight back with fire. "Get away from her!" Ji-hoon shouted, advancing even as every instinct told him to run. He swung the torch again and again, forcing the beast to retreat step by step. The creature's many eyes reflected the firelight with what might have been fear or might have been rage for a long, terrible moment. Ji-hoon thought it would attack anyway. Then the beast made a decision and turned and disappeared into the jungle. Its heavy footsteps fading into the distance, Ji-hoon stood there gasping, the torch still burning in his shaking hands. He could not believe that had worked. He could not believe he was still alive. Then he remembered the wounded creature and turned to find her watching him with large silver eyes. She was beautiful in a strange alien way, with iridescent wings folded against her back and a face that was almost but not quite human. Her exoskeleton was a deep purple color, decorated with patterns of gold that might have been natural or might have been some kind of jewelry. She tried to speak, but only a weak clicking sound came from her throat before her eyes rolled back and she collapsed. Ji-hoon knelt beside her and checked her wounds with hands that still trembled. The medical training he had received as part of his pilot certification was basic, but he could see that she had lost a lot of blood. A strange, silvery fluid seeped from deep gashes on her arms and side. He had no idea if human medicine would help or harm her, but he knew that doing nothing would. "Certainly let her die." "Okay," he said quietly. "Let us see if we can figure this out." He carried her back to his crashed ship. Surprised by how light she was despite being taller than him, her wings folded tight against her body, and she made soft sounds of pain even in unconsciousness. Ji-hoon laid her on the least damaged bunk and opened his medical kit. He started with the basics, cleaning the wounds and stopping the bleeding. The antiseptic made her twitch, but her bleeding slowed almost immediately, whatever her biology was. It seemed to respond well to human medicine through the long night. Ji-hoon sat beside her and monitored her breathing. He changed her bandages when they soaked through with silver blood. He talked to her even though she could not hear him, telling her about his ship and his cargo runs and the family back on Earth he had not seen in 3 years. By morning, her breathing had stabilized, and color had returned to her face. Ji-hoon allowed himself to hope that she might survive. That was when he heard the sound of many wings outside. He stepped out of the ship to find himself surrounded by dozens of creatures like the one he had saved. They wore armor and carried weapons that hummed with deadly energy. All of those weapons were pointed at him. A larger creature, scarred and fierce-looking, stepped forward and spoke in a language Ji-hoon did not understand. The meaning was clear enough from the gesture. "Come with us or die." Ji-hoon raised his hand slowly and nodded as soldiers entered his ship and emerged carrying the wounded creature with great care. Ji-hoon realized she must be someone important. The soldiers bound his hands and attached a device to his neck that tingled against his skin. Then they lifted into the air, carrying him between them as they flew towards something that glittered on the horizon. A palace of living crystal rose from the jungle, its spires reaching toward the sky like frozen flames. Ji-hoon was carried through halls filled with hundreds of the winged creatures, all of them stopping to stare at the strange small alien in their midst. Finally, they brought him to a vast chamber where a throne of woven silver sat upon a raised platform. On that throne sat the largest of the creatures he had seen, ancient and terrible and beautiful. Her eyes were like pools of liquid mercury, and when she looked at Ji-hoon, he felt like she was seeing everything he had ever been or done. "I am Valithra," she said, and the device on his neck translated her words into sounds he could understand. Queen of the Sarakai and mother of the daughter you saved. Ji-hoon swallowed hard. I am Yoon Ji-hoon, he managed to say. And I am very glad she's going to be okay. The queen leaned forward on her throne, studying him like a scientist examining a curious specimen. You will tell me, she said slowly, why you risked your life for a stranger. And Ji-hoon realized that this was only the beginning of his problems.